Hello and welcome to Heartbreak Stories. Today's story is about a man who built his entire life around a woman only to discover she had been quietly dismantling it from the inside for years. Get comfortable because this one is going to hit hard.
I reached into her coat pocket, looking for my keys. What I found instead ended 9 years of marriage in 30 seconds. She never saw it coming. Neither did I, until everything I thought I knew turned out to be a lie I'd been living inside. My name is Clayton Burke. I'm 44 years old. I'm the branch director of Harwick First National Bank in Columbus, Ohio, and up until 8 months ago, I thought I had a life most men would trade for without hesitation. Good career. Nice house in Clintonville. A wife named Rita who had green eyes, a sharp mind, and a laugh that used to fill every room she walked into. We met when she was 26, working as a junior analyst at a firm that handled some of our commercial accounts. I was 35, already running a mid-sized branch. She was the smartest person in every meeting she walked into, and she wasn't shy about it. I respected that. I fell for that. We got married 2 years later. No kids, we kept saying soon, and soon kept sliding further down the calendar. Looking back, I wonder if that was the first sign I ignored. Rita always had a reason to postpone. Career timing, travel, savings goals. Reasonable things. But there were a lot of reasonable things that, lined up one after another, started to look less like planning and more like avoidance. I should have paid closer attention, but I was busy building something, and I trusted her to be building it with me. The morning everything shifted, I wasn't even looking for trouble. It was a Thursday in late October. Rita had already left for work, or said she had. I was running behind, looking for my car keys, and I checked her coat on the hook near the door out of habit. Keys weren't there, but something else was. A phone. Small, dark, tucked flat into the inside pocket of her winter coat, like it had been carefully placed, not dropped. It wasn't her usual phone. Hers was the newer model with a blue case and a small scratch on the corner. This one was older, cheap, the kind you buy prepaid at a gas station. I held it for a long moment. Just held it. My thumb hovered over the button without pressing it. I set it back, found my keys, got in my car, drove halfway to the bank before I turned around. I don't know what made me go back. I'm not the suspicious type, or I wasn't. I'd never gone through her messages, never checked her location, never asked more than once where she was going. I believed in trust the way some men believe in gravity. You don't think about it, it's just there. But something in the weight of that phone, something about the way it was hidden rather than forgotten, reached into my chest and twisted. Back at the house, I found the coat, found the phone, and this time I turned it on. The screen lit up without a passcode. Dozens of messages. A contact saved only as G. No last name, no context, just a single letter sitting there like it was trying to disappear. The messages were casual in the worst possible way. Familiar, comfortable, easy. The kind of shorthand people develop when they've been talking long enough to drop every pretense. I scrolled back. The thread went deep. Months, not weeks. Then I found the last message Rita had sent the night before at 11:47 p.m. while I was asleep in the next room. I know you're upset. I'll make it up to you, I promise. I read it twice, then a third time. She hadn't sent that to me. She'd sent it to him. Whoever G was, he was upset, and she was promising to fix it. In our house, in our time, with words she'd never once said to me when I was the one who needed to hear them. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter, quietly. No throwing, no slamming. I just stood there in the silence of that kitchen and let it settle in my bones. Then I went to the closet, pulled out my overnight bag, and started packing. Not frantically, methodically. Shirts, pants, toiletries, my laptop, my passport. The same way I pack for a business trip, because some part of my brain was already treating this like a departure with no return date. I was out the door by 8:15. Rita sent me a text at 9:40. Morning, don't forget dinner's at 7. I looked at the message and said nothing. Just slid the phone into my jacket pocket and walked into my bank like it was any other day, because if I'd stopped to feel everything I was feeling right then, I wouldn't have been able to stand up straight. And I was not going to fall apart in a parking lot. Not yet. Not for her. I didn't go to the office that day. First time in 11 years, I called in without being sick. I told my assistant I had a family situation, which was technically true, just not in the way she probably imagined. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop on the far side of Columbus, a place Rita had never been, a place with no history attached to it. Ordered a black coffee I barely touched, and sat in the back corner with my laptop open like a man who had work to do. I did have work to do, just not the kind Harwick First National was paying me for. I started with what I knew: the phone, the contacts saved as G, the message thread going back months. I needed a name. I needed context. And I needed to understand exactly how deep this went before I made a single move. I pulled up the bank's internal directory on my personal laptop. Not the work system, no digital footprint I didn't want, and started going through the roster of staff who worked closely with Rita in her capacity as a financial analyst. She consulted regularly with our commercial lending team. That was a dozen people. One name surfaced faster than the others: Garrett Hollins, 38 years old, senior loan officer, 2 years at her branch. Before that, a mid-tier investment firm in Cincinnati. I'd personally reviewed his hire, signed off on his onboarding. He was good at his job, precise, client-friendly, reliable in meetings. I'd even mentioned him to the regional director as someone with upward potential. I sat with that for a moment. Then I kept digging. I checked Rita's calendar. She'd shared it with me years ago for scheduling purposes, and she'd never revoked access. Oversight or arrogance. Either way, it served me now. The entries were careful, but not careful enough. Team lunch, CR department. 7 times in 3 months on days I knew the commercial relations team didn't hold regular lunches. Offsite review, Pinnacle files. Twice. Training session, downtown. Once on a Saturday. I wrote every date down in a notebook. Old habit from my banking days. Paper doesn't get hacked, doesn't sync to shared clouds, doesn't show up in Discovery unless you put it there yourself. Then I called Naomi. Naomi Rhodes and I had been friends since we were both 22, working our first real jobs at the same downtown Columbus firm. She'd gone into corporate accounting, built a solid career, and remained the most straightforward person I'd ever known. She never softened things to protect your feelings, and she was the only person outside my marriage I genuinely trusted. She picked up on the second ring. "You never called during a workday," Naomi said. "What happened? I need to talk." Not on the phone. A pause. "How bad?" "Bad enough that I didn't go in today." She was at the coffee shop within 40 minutes. I laid it out plainly. The hidden phone, the message thread, the name I suspected, the calendar entries that didn't add up. Naomi listened without interrupting, which was unusual for her. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and studied me the way she always did when she was deciding how honest to be. "You think it's Hollins," she said finally. Not a question. The timing fits. The access fits. And Rita mentioned him twice in the last 2 months. Casually, like she was testing whether his name registered. Naomi's jaw tightened. "Clayton, he was at your branch anniversary dinner in September. I saw them talking by the bar. I thought nothing of it. I felt that land somewhere behind my ribs." "How long were they talking?" "Long enough that I noticed. Short enough that I told myself I was reading too much into it." She reached across and put her hand flat on the table. "I'm sorry I didn't say something." "You had nothing concrete," I replied. "Neither did I. Until now." We sat with that a moment. Then Naomi straightened up. "So what's the move?" I told her I wasn't ready to confront Rita. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to understand the full scope, and I needed to do it without tipping my hand. In my line of work, you don't freeze accounts until you've documented everything. You don't move until the case is clean. Naomi nodded slowly. "And Hollins? He comes in Monday. I'll watch. I won't act. Not yet." She looked at me carefully. "You're very calm for a man whose wife is." "I know what she's doing," I said, cutting in quietly. "Being calm is the only thing I can control right now." After Naomi left, I sat alone and opened the Notes app on my phone. I started a private document. Dates, names, observations. I also did something I'd never done in 18 years of marriage. I contacted a private investigator, a former bank fraud specialist I knew through professional channels. A man named Roy Peck, thorough and discreet. Roy answered on the first ring. I gave him Garrett Hollins' name, Rita's schedule, and 3 specific dates from her calendar. "How far back do you want me to go?" Roy asked. I thought about the hidden phone. About the months-deep thread. About a Saturday marked training session. Go back a year, I told him, and assume it started before that. Roy Peck worked fast. By Thursday, he had a preliminary report waiting in my email, encrypted exactly as I'd asked. I opened it at a diner 3 blocks from the bank, read it twice over eggs I didn't eat, then folded the laptop closed and sat looking at the wall for a while. Garrett Hollins and Rita. Confirmed. Photos taken at a restaurant in the short north on 2 separate evenings. A hotel in Dublin, Ohio. Receipt matched to a card in Hollins's name. On the date, Rita had marked off-site review in her calendar. Roy had also pulled Hollins's professional history and found something that hadn't come up in the original hiring background check. A prior HR complaint at a Cincinnati firm, filed by a married colleague, quietly settled and expunged when he resigned. I'd hired a man with a pattern. I closed my eyes for a moment. Not in grief, in focus. Everything I was feeling, and I was feeling plenty, had to go into a box until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. That's a skill you develop when you run a bank branch. You learn to separate the fire from the fuel. Friday morning, I called Roy back. How far does the history go? I asked. Sir, the current situation, I can place them together as far back as 11 months. But I found something else. A pause. Your wife maintained a separate email account. I can't access the content legally, but the account was created approximately 3 years into your marriage. 3 years. Rita and I have been married 9 years. She'd been building an exit strategy, or at least a separate life, for the last 6. I thanked Roy and ended the call. Then I sat in my car in the bank parking lot for exactly 4 minutes. I know because I watched the clock on the dash. For minutes of letting everything hit me at once. The waste of it, the years spent building a life with someone who'd been quietly undermining it the whole time. Then I got out of the car, straightened my jacket, and walked into the building. Garrett Hollins was already at his desk. He looked up when I passed, gave me the usual morning nod. I nodded back. Same as always. That evening I called Naomi and read her the highlights of Roy's report. She listened without interrupting, but I heard her breath change when I mentioned the hidden email account. 3 years ago, you were working 60-hour weeks, she said quietly. That merger nearly put you under. I know. She chose that window deliberately. I hadn't said it that way, but she was right. Rita had been patient, strategic. The same qualities I'd admired in her as a professional had been turned against me as a husband. What's next? Naomi asked. I need to confront her, I answered, but not before I talked to Dana Fuller. Dana was my attorney, a referral from Naomi as it happened. Sharp, no nonsense, the kind of lawyer who spoke in facts and didn't waste your time with sentiment. I got her on the phone Saturday morning. Bring me everything Roy documented, Dana said, after I'd given her the outline. The photos, the hotel receipt, the calendar entries, your own notes. In Ohio, documented infidelity doesn't determine asset division, but it absolutely informs the narrative if she tries to claim constructive abandonment or emotional neglect. A brief pause. Is there any chance she's aware you know? None, I said. She sent me a text yesterday about dinner reservations. Good. Keep it that way until we're ready. Dana's voice was level and precise. Don't move money. Don't change passwords. Don't do anything that signals a shift. We build a case first. Then you move. I spent the rest of that Saturday at Naomi's kitchen table, going through documents while she made coffee and said nothing unless I asked. That's the thing about real friends. They understand that sometimes the best thing they can offer is a steady presence and a full pot. By evening, the file was organized, dated, and ready for Dana. I drove home at 9. Rita was on the couch, laptop open, glass of wine beside her. She looked up and smiled. The same smile she'd always had, the one that used to mean something. Long day, she asked. Long week, I replied, walking past her to the kitchen. I poured a glass of water, stood at the counter, and listened to her talk about some work presentation she was preparing. I answered in the right places. I looked at her when it was natural to look. And the whole time, behind everything I said, there was just one clear, cold thought running on a loop. She has no idea what's already in motion. I chose Sunday morning, not because it was symbolic, because Rita had no work obligations, no appointments to hide behind, No reason to cut the conversation short. I wanted her cornered, not physically, not cruelly, but conversationally. No exits. She was in the kitchen when I came downstairs, making coffee, still in her robe, hair pulled up the way she wore it on weekends. She looked relaxed. That was the word. Relaxed, in a house I was about to change the temperature of permanently. I sat down at the kitchen table and set Roy's printed summary. 2 pages, no photos yet, just dates and locations, face up between us. Rita turned, saw the papers, and went very still. "Sit down," I said. Not harshly, just firmly enough that it wasn't a request. She sat. She looked at the papers without touching them, then looked at me. Something moved behind her eyes. Calculation, not guilt. "Clayton, read the first page," I said. She didn't. She kept her eyes on mine. "Where did you get this?" "Read it, Rita." A long pause. Then she looked down. I watched her face as she read. The way it shifted from controlled to brittle as the dates stacked up. When she finished, she set the paper down with hands that weren't quite steady. "It's not what it looks like," she said quietly. "Tell me what it looks like to you," I replied, "and we'll compare notes." Her jaw tightened. She didn't like that. Rita was used to being the sharpest person in the room, and being outmaneuvered on her own ground unsettled her more than I'd expected. "We got close," she said finally. "It got out of hand. It's been over for 2 months." "Has it?" "Yes." She met my eyes with something that might have been sincerity if I didn't know better by then. "Clayton, I know I hurt you. I know this looks terrible, but it meant nothing. It was a mistake I let go too far, and I ended it." I let that sit for a moment. Then I leaned forward slightly. "The hotel in Dublin was November 14th, I said. "I have a receipt. Your last message to him on that phone was 4 days ago. So let's try this again without the part where you tell me it's over." The color left her face. "You went through my things," she said, voice tightening. "You had a second phone in your coat pocket." I shot back evenly. "Don't talk to me about boundaries." She stood up, crossed her arms, her default armor, and turned toward the window. "So what do you want, Clayton? You want me to grovel? You want me to beg?" "I want the truth," I said. "All of it. How long, how often, and whether you ever brought him into this house." A silence. Outside, a neighbor's dog was barking somewhere down the block. Rita's shoulders rose once, then fell. 8 months, she said to the window. "Not here. Never here. 8 months." The number landed like something physical. I've been trusting her, building plans with her, talking about the future with her, for 8 months while she was running a second life 3 miles away. I stood up slowly. "I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. My attorney will be in touch with yours by end of week." She spun around. "You're not even going to try to work through this?" I picked up the documents from the table and looked at her. Really looked, the way you look at something you're seeing clearly for the first time. "You had 8 months to work through it, Rita. You spent them hiding a phone in your coat." I walked out of the kitchen. Behind me, I heard her say my name once, then again, then nothing. I took the stairs, finished packing the bag I'd quietly prepared the night before, and was out the front door in under 10 minutes. She sent me a text 40 minutes later. I saw the notification light up the screen on the passenger seat. "Please come back. We can fix this. I'll make it up to you." I watched the screen go dark. I never opened it. I was already gone. The hotel room I checked into was clean, quiet, and completely anonymous. That suited me fine. I didn't need comfort right now. I needed clarity, and sometimes clarity comes easier when you strip the surroundings down to nothing. Monday morning, I was back at the bank. Professional mask on, jacket pressed, the same Clayton Burke who'd walked those halls for 11 years. Garrett Hollins came in at 8:30. I watched him settle at his desk through the glass partition of my office, pour his coffee, pull up his screen. Ordinary, relaxed. A man with no idea that the ground beneath him had already shifted. I didn't approach him. Dana had been specific about that. Nothing confrontational at the workplace until the legal framework was in place. So I observed, documented, and waited. What I hadn't anticipated was my mother. Irene Mercer called me Tuesday at noon. She was 68, sharp as a tack, and lived 40 minutes outside Columbus in the same house she and my father had built in 1981. She didn't call during my workday unless something was wrong. "Rita came to see me yesterday," she said, without preamble. I set down my pen. "What did she say?" She said you'd left without explanation, that you'd been distant for months, that she was worried about your mental state, and that she was trying to hold things together. My mother's voice was careful, measured. She cried, Clayton. Sat at my kitchen table and cried. I let a beat pass. Did you believe her? A long pause. I believe she was scared. Whether the story she told was true, that's a different question. You're my son. I know how you operate. You don't go quiet without a reason. I have a reason, I said. The documented one. I can't get into it today, but I will. I need you to not engage with Rita until I can sit down with you. Can you do that for me? Another pause, shorter this time. Yes, but Clayton. Her voice gentled slightly. Whatever this is, you call me. You don't carry it alone. I know, Mom. I'll come Saturday. I ended the call and sat with it for a moment. Rita had moved fast. She'd gone to my mother before I'd even spoken to a judge, before any papers had been filed, before she knew the full extent of what I had on her. She was building her version of the story while mine was still being assembled. I called Naomi that evening and told her about my mother's visit. Classic, Naomi said flatly. She's working the perimeter. If she can't get to you, she'll work the people around you. My mother didn't buy it, I replied. Good. What about Garrett? Still at his desk, every morning like nothing happened. I paused. Dana says I can address the employment situation once the divorce filing is confirmed. Conflict of interest, professional boundary violations. There's a clean path. You're going to enjoy that part, Naomi said. I'm not going to enjoy any of it, I replied, but I'm going to do all of it. Saturday, I drove out to my mother's house. Irene met me at the door with coffee already poured and a look that said she'd been thinking about this all week. I sat at the same kitchen table Rita had sat at 3 days earlier and told my mother the truth. Not everything, not the raw, ugliest details, but enough. The hidden phone, the months of documentation. Garrett Hollins. My mother listened the way she always listened, without interrupting, without reacting dramatically, just taking it in with those steady gray eyes. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. She sat in my kitchen and performed grief, Irene said at last, while you were sitting in a hotel room with the evidence of what she actually did. That's about the size of it. Irene set her mug down firmly. Then you do what you need to do. And don't you dare apologize for it. I stayed for dinner. Drove back through the dark with the windows cracked, the cold October air moving through the car. For the first time in a week, something in my chest had settled. Not healed, nothing like that, but steadied. My mother knew the truth. The people who mattered knew the truth. Rita could tell whatever story she wanted. The facts were already filed with Dana Fuller's office. Dana called me on a Wednesday morning, 2 weeks after I'd handed her the full file. Everything's in order, she said. Petition filed this morning. Rita will be served by end of day Thursday. And Clayton, before she is, you need to deal with the situation at the bank. She was right. I've been sitting on it long enough. I called HR Director Pauline Voss at 9 and asked for a closed-door meeting at 2. Pauline was thorough and by the book, exactly what I needed. I laid out the documented relationship between Garrett Hollins and my wife, the professional boundary violations, the conflict of interest it created within the branch structure. I put Roy's photographs on the table and let them speak. Pauline's expression didn't change. She took notes and said she'd loop in regional compliance before the day was out. By 4 o'clock, Garrett Hollins was in that same conference room without me. I didn't watch. I didn't need to. I was in my office reviewing Q4 reports when Naomi texted, "Heard from a friend at your branch. Someone packed a box today." I read the message and set my phone face down on the desk. Rita was served Thursday afternoon. She called me 11 times between 4 and 7 p.m. I let every call go. At 7:18, a text arrived. "This is not what I wanted. Please call me. We need to talk like adults." I forwarded it to Dana and said nothing else. Friday, Naomi came by the hotel with takeout and a bottle of decent bourbon. We sat at the small table by the window, and she let me talk about the 9 years, about the merger when I'd worked myself to the bone and Rita had been quietly building a second life, about the version of her I'd been holding on along after the real one had moved on. "You're not grieving her," Naomi said at one point, watching me carefully. "You're grieving who you thought she was." I looked at her across the table. "Is there a difference?" "All the difference in the world," she replied. One of them was real. The other one was yours. I turned that over for a while. Outside the window, Columbus moved in its usual Friday night rhythm, indifferent and ongoing. She went to my mother, I said. I know. Naomi refilled her glass. And your mother sent her packing. Not exactly. She listened, then called me. Same thing, Naomi said, with a small, firm smile. I raised my glass slightly. She raised hers back. It wasn't a celebration. It was something quieter and more durable than that. Two people who'd known each other long enough to sit in the hard parts of a story without needing to dress it up. The bourbon was good. The night was cold. And for the first time since I'd found that phone in Rita's coat pocket, I felt like myself again. Not the version of me that had been waiting for something to go wrong, but the one who knew exactly what to do when it did. Dana called on a Monday morning with the kind of measured calm that meant something had broken in our favor. Rita's attorney filed a counterclaim Friday afternoon, she said. Emotional neglect, constructive abandonment, claims you were consistently unavailable during the marriage. Standard playbook when the documented party needs a counterweight. A pause. They're also requesting a 50-50 split on all marital assets, including your pension and the Clintonville property. I was sitting at the hotel desk with my second coffee, watching morning traffic move below the window. What's our position? Strong, Dana replied. The infidelity documentation neutralizes the neglect narrative considerably. But I want to strengthen our timeline further. Is there anything from earlier in the marriage, communications, records, anything that establishes the pattern on her end predates what Roy documented? I thought about it. Then I remembered the attic. When we bought the Clintonville house 7 years ago, Rita had moved boxes of old personal items up there. Journals, correspondence, things she described as old junk I can't throw away. I'd never touched them. Never had a reason to. I called Naomi. I need to get into the house, I told her. Rita's at work Tuesdays until 6. I still have a key and my name's on the deed. I need 30 minutes in the attic. I'm driving, Naomi said, without a second's hesitation. Tuesday afternoon, we let ourselves in through the back door. The house smelled different, a candle I didn't recognize, something floral and foreign. I moved fast up the stairs, up the attic pull-down, into the low-ceilinged space above our bedroom. The boxes were where they'd always been. I went through 3 before I found what I was looking for, and what I found was worse than I'd prepared myself for. A bundle of printed emails, rubber-banded together, dated from the 3rd year of our marriage. Not from Garrett Hollins. A different name entirely. A man named Paul. No last name on the messages themselves, but the email domain matched a firm Rita had worked for briefly before joining our bank's client network. The messages were unambiguous. They ran for 4 months. They stopped abruptly, no explanation. 3 years into our marriage. She'd been doing this since year 3. I photographed every page with my phone, replaced the bundle exactly as I'd found it, and climbed back down. Naomi was waiting at the bottom of the attic stairs. She looked at my face and didn't ask a single question until we were back in the car. How bad? She said. She started in year 3, I replied. Different man. Before Hollins. Naomi stared straight through the windshield. 9 years, Clayton. I know. She never stopped. She just rotated. I didn't answer that. I didn't need to. We drove back in near silence, and I sat with the specific weight of understanding that I hadn't lost a marriage. I never fully had one. I sent the photographs to Dana that evening. She called within the hour. This changes the timeline substantially, Dana said. If we can establish a pattern of behavior going back to year 3, the neglect counterclaim becomes very difficult to sustain. A spouse who has been serially unfaithful cannot credibly argue the marriage failed because of the other party's emotional distance. A brief pause. Clayton, this is a strong case. She's not getting half the pension. I set the phone down and sat in the quiet of the hotel room. 9 years. A hidden phone. An attic full of evidence she'd never thought to destroy. A man she'd married who turned out to be better at documentation than she'd anticipated. I picked up my phone and texted Naomi. Dana says it's strong. The reply came back in under a minute. I know. So do you. 3 weeks after the petition was filed, Rita showed up at my hotel. I don't know how she found out which one. Probably through mutual acquaintances, possibly through her attorney's investigative resources. It didn't matter. What mattered was that she was standing in the corridor outside room 214 when I came back from an evening run, hair pulled back, no makeup, wearing the kind of plain clothes that said she dressed down deliberately. She looked tired, genuinely tired, not performed. 5 minutes, she said. That's all I'm asking. I considered it for a moment. Then I opened the door and stepped aside. She came in and stood near the window, arms folded loosely. Not the defensive armor I'd seen in the kitchen confrontation, just someone who didn't know what to do with her hands. I stayed near the door. I didn't offer her a seat. I know about the counterclaim, I said. If you came to sell me the neglect narrative in person, you've wasted a drive. I didn't come about the case, she said quietly. I came because I wanted to say something to you directly, not through attorneys. I waited. She looked at the floor for a moment. When she looked back up, something in her expression had dropped the strategy entirely. I made choices I can't undo. I know that. I'm not asking you to forgive me or take me back. I needed you to know that what we had in the beginning was real. For me, before I started making it into something it wasn't. I looked at her for a long moment. Rita, I found the emails from year 3. The color left her face. The bundle in the attic, I said. The man named Paul. For months, early in our marriage. I kept my voice level. So, when you tell me the beginning was real, I need you to define what beginning you mean. Because mine started at the wedding. She opened her mouth, closed it, pressed her lips together. That was a mistake I buried, she said finally. I convinced myself it never happened. You convinced yourself, I repeated. And in the meantime, I spent 9 years believing I was building something with someone who was present. Her eyes filled. This time, I believed the tears were genuine. But genuine grief for being caught is still a different thing from genuine remorse for causing damage, and I'd learned to tell the difference. I'm sorry, she said, low, stripped of anything rehearsed. Truly, I believe you mean that right now, I replied. It doesn't change the filing. She nodded slowly, didn't argue, didn't push. She picked up her jacket from the chair she'd set it on and moved toward the door. As she passed me, she stopped for just a moment. You deserved better, she said, without looking at me. I knew that the whole time. She left. The door clicked shut behind her.
She knew the whole time he deserved better, and she chose to stay silent and keep hurting him anyway. I don't know what's harder to accept, the betrayal itself, or the fact that she was fully aware of what she was doing to this man.
I stood in the middle of the room for a while, letting the silence settle. No rage, no urge to call her back, no second-guessing. Just a steady, clear sense of finality, the kind that comes not from winning an argument, but from understanding completely and without remainder that there is nothing left to argue about. I called Naomi. She picked up on the second ring. She came to the hotel, I said. What did she want? To apologize, I replied, and to find out how much I knew. Did it change anything? I looked at the closed door. Not a thing. The hearing was set for a Thursday in January, 9 weeks after Dana had filed the petition. Columbus in January is a particular kind of gray, low sky, bare trees, the kind of cold that doesn't announce itself dramatically but just settles in and stays. I drove to the courthouse alone. Naomi had offered to come. I told her I'd call after. This was something I needed to do, standing on my own 2 feet. Dana was already in the corridor outside the courtroom when I arrived, briefcase open on a bench, reviewing notes with a focused efficiency I'd come to rely on. She looked up when she heard my footsteps. She's here, Dana said. Her attorney tried to reach me yesterday about a last-minute settlement discussion. I told them we'd hear what they had to say after the session opens. What are they offering? We'll find out. She snapped the briefcase shut. But whatever it is, it's coming from a position of weakness. That email bundle from the attic changed the calculus for Gerald Price. He knows what a pattern of conduct argument does to his clients standing in front of this judge. I nodded. We walked in together. Rita was already seated at the opposing table with Gerald Price, a composed man in a dark suit who carried the practiced neutrality of someone paid to show nothing. Rita was in a charcoal blazer, hair up. She looked composed until the moment I sat down, and then she looked at the table. The judge was a woman named Honorable Carol Strickland, direct, unhurried, clearly someone who had seen every flavor of marital dissolution and was not interested in theater. She opened by acknowledging both filings and inviting preliminary statements. Gerald Price spoke first. He laid out Rita's position with technical precision. The marriage had deteriorated due to mutual distance. The documented incidents were a symptom rather than a cause, and his client sought an equitable division of all marital assets, including the pension and the Clintonville property. Dana let him finish without expression. Then she stood up. She walked the judge through the timeline. Year 3, the printed emails. The current relationship, Roy Peck's documentation. The hidden second phone. The calendar entries. Rita's visit to my mother, designed to preemptively shape the family narrative. She presented it not as drama, but as evidence, chronological, sourced, and methodical. The kind of case that doesn't need to raise its voice because the facts are already speaking at full volume. When Dana sat down, Judge Strickland studied the submitted exhibits for a long moment. "Counsel," she said to Gerald Price, "your client's counterclaim of constructive abandonment is difficult to sustain against a documented pattern of marital misconduct spanning multiple years. I'd encourage you to consult with your client during recess." Gerald Price consulted. Recess lasted 22 minutes. When we reconvened, the counterclaim had been withdrawn. The final terms took another hour to negotiate. Rita received a fair share of the liquid marital assets accumulated during the marriage, savings, joint accounts, a portion of appreciated value in the home. She received nothing from the pension, nothing beyond standard equity from the Clintonville property, given the documented misconduct, and no claim whatsoever to my professional accounts or career earnings. Garrett Hollins, for his part, had already been quietly terminated from Harwick First National on the basis of the professional conduct review Pauline Voss had completed. He was gone by the time the hearing took place, his departure handled through standard HR process. No spectacle, no confrontation. Just a man who had made a serious miscalculation about whose house he was playing games in. When we walked out of the courthouse, the January air hit clean and sharp. Dana shook my hand on the steps and told me the final paperwork would be processed within 30 days. I thanked her. Watcher walked to her car. Then I stood on the courthouse steps for a moment, hands in my coat pockets, looking out at the street. It wasn't triumph. I want to be honest about that. There was no surge of victory, no sense of the score being settled. What filled the space where the marriage used to live, was something quieter and more permanent. The particular relief of a man who has carried something very heavy for a long time and has finally, cleanly, set it down. I called Naomi from the car. "How'd it go?" she asked. "Clean," I said. "Counterclaim withdrawn. Pension protected. Property protected." A pause. "And Rita, she gets what the law says she's entitled to. Not a dollar more." Naomi was quiet for a moment. "Are you okay?" I watched a delivery truck roll through the intersection ahead of me, the driver completely unaware of what had just happened in the building behind us. Ordinary life just continuing. "I will be," I said, and I meant it. 14 months after that courthouse morning, I was in a different city. Not running, relocating. Harwick's regional director had offered me the district oversight position in Cincinnati 6 months after the divorce finalized. A role I'd been quietly considered for before everything imploded. I took it. New office, broader scope. A reason to point myself forward rather than circle the same geography where every street corner had a memory attached to it. I kept the Clintonville house for 8 months, then sold it. The number was good. I put the proceeds into an account I opened under my name only and left it there untouched while I figured out what came next. Naomi visited twice that first year. We talked on the phone every week or two, the easy, durable kind of communication that doesn't need a reason. She was still in Columbus, still sharp, still the most honest person I knew. Whatever she was in my life, she was necessary to it. And I'd stopped feeling the need to categorize it more precisely than that. My mother came to Cincinnati for Thanksgiving. We cooked badly and laughed about it, and she didn't mention Rita's name once, which was the greatest gift she could have given me. I ran into Rita on a Saturday in late February, when I was back in Columbus for a quarterly review. It wasn't planned. I was coming out of a coffee shop on High Street, and she was walking in. We both stopped. She looked older in a way that had nothing to do with years. Thinner. The composure she'd always worn like a second skin was present, but worn at the edges. She had the look of someone who had gotten the life she'd chosen and found it smaller than she'd imagined. We stood on the sidewalk for a moment that lasted about 10 seconds and felt considerably longer. "Clayton," she said. "Rita," I replied. Nothing dramatic. No speeches. She moved toward the door and I moved toward the street. And that was the full extent of it. Two people who had once meant everything to each other, reduced by choices she had made to the exchange of first names on a sidewalk. That evening I sat in my Cincinnati apartment, a clean, spare place on the fourth floor with a view of the river, and opened my laptop. I wrote out the story the way I'd been turning it over in my head for 14 months, the whole arc of it, and posted it anonymously to a Reddit community for men going through the wreckage of broken marriages. I didn't expect much. I wasn't looking for validation. What I got instead was 700 comments and a direct message inbox that took me 2 weeks to work through. Men from every state, every age bracket, every profession, saying variations of the same thing. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for putting it into words. I read every single one. I didn't respond to all of them, but I responded to the ones that needed a reply. The ones where a man was still in the thick of it, still trying to decide whether to stay or go, still wondering if trusting his instincts made him paranoid or clear-eyed. To those ones I wrote the same thing, more or less. Your instincts are not the problem. The only question is whether you're willing to follow them to the truth, even when the truth costs you something. It cost me something. The 9 years, the house, the version of the future I'd built in my head. But what I kept was more valuable than any of it. My name, my record, my ability to look at myself straight. Some losses, when you examine them honestly, turn out to be the most important things you ever let go of.
9 years, and she was running a separate life for most of them. What strikes me most about this story isn't the betrayal, it's how long a person can smile at you across the dinner table while carrying a secret that would destroy everything. Clayton's story is a reminder that the people who hurt us most are rarely strangers. They're the ones we handed the keys to. If this story made you think, if it made you feel something, then it did exactly what it was supposed to do. Thank you for being here. Stay sharp, stay true to yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.